As you said, I work as a communications manager for National Marine Education Association. And I also work with Delaware Sea Grant, which is a NOAA organization, as part of my doctoral work. So a lot of my talk today is going to focus on some of my supportive communications work for Delaware Sea Grant and the science that happens at University of Delaware as part of the College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment. But since we're talking about digital storytelling, I'm going to start with a little story of my own to get us started. Basically, how horses led me to science, which led me to this point right here. It's kind of a, whoops. Let's try that again. There we go. I grew up on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is, I still contend, one of the most beautiful places in the world. Right on the other side of the Atlantic coast. Grew up on the beach, loving the ocean, visiting the ocean, and I had one other love, which was horses. I grew up riding. I started Western cowboy style, switched over to English because I wanted to go fast and jump high, and absolutely fell in love with horses. And competed quite a bit, and I decided what I wanted to be when I grow up was a veterinarian. And I was very focused on that. I was going to be a veterinarian, I was going to work on equines, and that's what I was going to do. So that led me to a path down science. And right through undergraduate work, I basically focused on biochemistry, got right into veterinary school, started veterinary school, and within the first year of veterinary school, I decided I did not want to be a veterinarian. Way too much of a softie. Called home crying one too many times to my dad saying, I don't think this is right. And my dad's a college professor, and after one too many calls, he said, maybe you should try something else. So I didn't know what to do. I had blinders on. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I had this huge science background. I was 21 years old, and all of a sudden, I was at a loss. My sister at the time was paying her way through law school by being a flight attendant. And she said, you should take a break and travel. And I was like, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do. So I applied and became a flight attendant. And basically traveled for 3 years. And saw the world, went all over the place, and got my first laptop. I'm also kind of a techno geek. I love gadgets. My first laptop was probably about the size of my suitcase at the time. But I carried it all around and started blogging and started travel blogging and writing and realized how much I loved doing that. I also knew I did not want to be a flight attendant for the rest of my life, and I really missed the science part. So fortunately, I was based in Philadelphia at the time with my airline, and the dot-com boom started exploding, and everyone had funding to do really cool things on the web. And fortunately for me, one of those places was beyondbooks.com, which was in Philadelphia. And they were looking for science editors for their website. They were doing online textbooks. They were way ahead of their time. But they had great funding, and they were hiring, and I applied. And fortunately, the person who was taking the applications went to the same college as I, and literally within 10 minutes of putting in my resume, I had an interview, and I was hired the next day. I quit flying, and I became a science editor, which was really exciting and a lot of fun until the funding ran out. We went from pizza parties to having a few pretzels on the table, and I saw the writing on the wall, and the dot-com boom burst, and once again, I was left with, what am I going to do? So I went back to school, but instead of being a veterinarian, I decided I was going to be a science journalist, and went to University of Maryland's College of Journalism, which at the time had just kicked off a very cool program called online journalism. Giving away my age here, but they had this cool multi-platform program that they were having trouble getting people to sign up for. There was just myself and one other gentleman in the program, but they were kind of on the cutting edge for leading people into online journalism. So we got to work on the broadcast side, we got to work on the print side, and we were the two people in the computer lab putting everything together for everyone who was writing long-form journalism, doing broadcasts, and we were getting everything online. So it ended up being an incredible program that let me also focus on writing about science and getting science out there in various forms online. So once I finished up that program, I was excited. I had this master's degree. I'm going to be a science journalist, but there weren't many jobs out there, which led me to AmeriCorps. If anyone's not familiar, the AmeriCorps program is kind of a domestic Peace Corps in the US, in which you can work in different communities and help out in communities. In exchange, they'll help pay off your graduate tuition and your student loans, and you give back to the community in many different ways. And Delaware had an AmeriCorps program with the state parks, and they were looking for environmental educators. I love the environment. I have a background in science. I'm going to do this. And it was a great program. And they put me at Cape Henlopen State Park right back on the Atlantic near home, and I felt at home. And I got there, and I got all set up, and the first thing they did was make me be a pirate. This is a story for another day, but I spent a year doing all different types of education, from the history of pirates to environmental education, and going out and teaching about everything along the coastline and the shore with the park. And it was a great informal education experience. And that led me to do other things like some photo and video stories for the parks, where I got to use my journalism background, which led to my current positions. When I finished up with my AmeriCorps duty, I applied to University of Delaware to be a science writer at their College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment. And when they looked at my background, they said, well, we really don't have anyone doing the digital side, and they actually rewrote the position to be a digital outreach specialist. And that allowed me to do some informal outreach, as well as the science communication and the video work, and led to my graduate work now, as well as my work with the National Marine Educators Association, which allows me to live back on the Atlantic at home. So the point of this story is life isn't a straight line. We think it's going to be a straight line. We've got this focus. We think it's going to be step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's going to be this perfect linear action, and it's not. And science is not as well. And that's where a lot of the science, where a lot of the stories lay in science, is that the scientific process, when you first learn it, it may look like that linear straight line. You have this question, you have this hypothesis, you test it, and everything goes bam, 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 and then you've got this conclusion. But we all know it kind of goes off in different directions. You may have one question, but when you start testing that question, it leads off in a different direction, which leads to a different hypothesis. And that's often where some of the most interesting things are. As Facebook would say, it's complicated. That's our relationship with science. And as communicators, that's kind of our job to sort it out. Another quote I have up there is, necessity is the mother of invention. I like to kind of rewrite that and say tiny working budgets are the mother of invention, because that's what I work with, that's what many of you work with, and that's what's led me to kind of get as creative as I can be with the technology I have to tell the stories that are out there for both my college and Delaware Sea Grant and NMEA. Basically everything I work with now I have up here, from GoPro, my smartphone is my main tool, down to kind of the new virtual reality cameras, which I'll talk about in a moment. So basically my philosophy with Sea Grant has been, let's see what works. That's kind of worked in my life so far. I've never quite known what the next step is going to be, but it's always kind of fallen into place. And that's like the approach I've taken at Delaware Sea Grant. Our motto is science serving the Delaware coast. That's what we're supposed to be explaining to the general public. The problem is, when I first started with Delaware Sea Grant, not many people, even in Delaware, which is an extremely small state in the US, not many people were aware of our program or the science that we're doing. And they saw this and they were like, well, great, what science are you doing to serve us? And we were trying to get that story out, because it was a wide, wide variety of work, everything from seafood technology to what's safe to eat, to coastal processes and how storms and erosion affect the coast, to various types of oceanic research. So started on social media, kind of at the very start of it, started with Facebook, started with Twitter, and started working with some of the other community partners on the social side for all of us to kind of get our story out and support each other on that. We also looked at how we could reuse some of the stuff that we're already producing. We were doing a great PSA that was going out on the radio, 60 seconds of science called C-Talk, which talked about various issues along the Delaware coast and how our research was working towards helping people on those issues. It was a great PSA. It was on the radio. If you listened to certain radio stations, you heard it, but it was a very limited audience. So one of the first things I did was take that audio and make videos out of it so we could use it on YouTube. So we basically took still images, took this wonderful audio, professional quality audio we already had, put the still images to it, and all of a sudden we had nice 60-second videos that we could share on YouTube and different social media platforms. So we're getting more eyes on our C-Talks, and but we're still trying to figure out how to get people more engaged and thinking about what we were doing. And we could tell from the data we're getting back that the C-Talks were great on certain subjects, but other subjects they weren't very engaging. On YouTube, you can look at the analytics on the back end, and you can actually see attention spans and where people fall off. And we were losing people, especially when we had the talking heads on. Whenever we had the scientists on, if we kept the cute critters on or kept a nice, beautiful imagery, we were able to engage people more. But we didn't have the attention span that we wanted. So we started looking to some different platforms that were emerging to see what we could use. And Instagram was one of them. And we kind of had a breakthrough moment on Instagram. We were posting the pictures and having some success on there. And then we were doing a teacher workshop, and I work very closely with an education specialist at Delaware Sea Grant and cover a lot of what he does because he's kind of on the front lines of going out into the public and educating the public about what we do. And we took a bunch of teachers out to a horseshoe crab survey on the Delaware Bay. We've got the largest breeding population of our type of horseshoe crab in the world. Every May and June, they all come up on shore and they spawn. And we've got just this incredible piles of horseshoe crabs on the beach. And the females lay up to 80,000 eggs in the season. So it's quite a phenomenon. Lots of people come to see it, and we take teachers out to learn about it. Well, one night I was out there with the education specialist, and he picked up an egg where you can see the little horseshoe crab spinning in it. And I just recorded the little horseshoe crab spinning around in that little egg and the people's reaction to it.
Got it moving around?
Yeah.
Are you going to do that?
And it's a very simple little clip, but it's showing something that not many people see, and it really gained traction. We put it on Instagram. Usually when we share on Instagram, then we share on Facebook and on YouTube as well. And people were sharing this like crazy, and we were getting a lot of comments and just a lot of traction on this, and we had kind of a light bulb moment that this type of imagery really works. It's something that people usually don't get to see in their everyday life. It's short, it's interesting. How about if we take that C-Talk, that 60-second of science, and why don't we break it down to 15 seconds? And let's see what kind of science we can explain in 15 seconds. Because at that time, Instagram limited video to 15 seconds. Since then, it's expanded it out to 60. But we kind of gave ourselves this challenge and see how's this going to work. So one of the first things we did was we were actually at the NMEA conference, which was in Rhode Island that summer. And we were at an aquarium, and they had a great little display showing a skate with an egg case. And I took a quick clip on my phone, and I showed it to Chris, our education specialist, and he's like, all right, this might work. So we did this one.
Have you ever found one of these on the beach and wondered what it was? It's a skate egg case. Skates are a distant cousin of the shark, and inside this case, also known as a mermaid's purse, a developing embryo spends about 12 weeks, after which it emerges as a fully independent and developed juvenile.
And it worked. People always on our coast wanted to know what those little things were, and then they could actually see inside. So again, we were looking at the analytics and the sharing and the comments we were getting back and the questions and the engagement we were getting, and folks absolutely loved it. And for the first time, we really had something that was kind of working on all the platforms, and we could see both in the analytics and the actual engagement that this was working. So we started doing it once a week. We started putting them out every Friday. We put them out on Instagram on Friday night. On Saturday morning, I share it on the other social platforms and get it up on YouTube. And we use it across all platforms. And then we started talking to some of our research scientists and said, a lot of them have their funding. They've got to do an education outreach portion of their grant work, and started having them do some guest episodes. And then we started talking to the graduate students and say, hey, you're doing really cool work, graduate work. Can you do some of these? So we started really kind of pulling in the whole college in the Sea Grant program, and doing these on all different types of subjects, and I'll show you a few more examples. And then we also started thinking about what can we show people what they can do, how they can help out along our coast, and kind of give them some things that they can think about. So on these next few, this next one, we show them what they can do. One of the biggest questions we get through social media is how to help the horseshoe crabs in the spring, especially when we have storms coming through. They get upside down, people see them on the beach. Their legs are going all over the place, and people want to help them, but they're scared of them because they have these long, pointy tails. So we did one during spawning season on flipping the horseshoe crab.
Do you know how to help a horseshoe crab that's stranded on the beach? Simply pick it up like a cereal bowl, never by the tail. Flip it over and place it at the water's edge, legs down.
And then this is an example of one of our researchers. And his sound isn't working. Not sure that's working. He works on coastal processes, so he was talking about beach safety and how never turn your back to the waves because they can knock you down, even a 2 to 3 inch wave. And this is a graduate student.
Did you know that sea scallops can swim? Sea scallops have smooth shells specifically adapted for swimming. If they sense a predator, they can clap their 2 shells together and move across the seafloor in short bursts.
So all of these gain traction for different ways. Some were showing how you can help, some were safety messages, and some were showing kind of the deep sea things that you don't get to see in real life. People know what scallops look like on their plate, but they had no idea that they can actually be cute Muppet-like swimming creatures as well. So they were very shareable, and they kind of brought the research to the people in an engaging way. And in doing this, we basically, this is what we followed. We try something, we assess if it works. If it seems to be working, then we tweak it to see how it might work better, and then we repeat. We use a lot of analytics. All of social media anymore has great back-end analytics where you can see exactly what's going on with everything that you put out there. This is an example of the Swimming Scallops YouTube video. This is showing the audience retention. It's a graph. As you play the video, you can actually watch and see where people drop off in the videos. You can see exactly on the screen what's happening. And a lot of these pieces, we have a 100% retention rate because, one, it's only 15 seconds. Once you take out the little opening, we're actually about 12 and a half seconds when it comes down to the science. But it's great for the shorter attention spans, which if you look at Pew Research with internet trends, those attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So it's great for that. It's great for all the different platforms. And it's great in that we can pull things together now that we have a collection of videos into different playlists. So they're now being used by teachers. We've got a whole Delaware Bay Critters playlist. We have a beach safety playlist that like the tourism board can use, where we've got these shareable chunks of information that both highlight our work and are engaging and useful for the public. A couple more examples. This shows on Facebook where you can see the video views. You can also see the average completion rate This was on the Mermaid's Purse one that also has a 100% completion rate. And this is the Mermaid's Purse. You can dig really deep into the data and see how many likes and shares there are on posts from other posts, and kind of really dig into what's happening with each piece. Another example of how we've kind of experimented with social media to see how we can build awareness for our program. It's been our Coast Day program. Our college and university has an annual open house for Sunday of October each year, where we've had as many as 13,000 people come through our campus in one day. It's a 6-hour event. So it's quite something. We have scientists from all over the region come in, talk about their work. We have seafood cooking demos. So it's a huge public event on the campus. And it's been, like I said, up to 13,000 in the past. Numbers started to drop off. So in the past year, we were trying to figure out kind of a new way to get the word out, to really get people to come into the campus. And this was another experiment that worked well. We were having, is anyone familiar with Teach Fleet? There's a gentleman who actually recreates research vessels and large ships out of Legos. We were having this gentleman come in. He's actually a retired captain with his Lego fleet. And that was going to be a big draw for the children. So we were thinking, how can we kind of pull this all together? And I was actually in the shopping mall walking past a Lego store, and I saw a little Lego submersible. And I was like, oh, submersible, this is cool. And my husband was all excited because he loves Legos. I did not grow up with them, he did. So he bought it, put it together for me, and then we started using it on social to promote our Coast Day, and it ended up being one of our most shared and viewed social campaigns that we had. We did this countdown to Coast Day using our little Lego submersible. So again, social media, free to use. The submersible costs like 25 bucks, and we just took, I had the submersible with me everywhere. I had it in my bag. We're out on a research cruise. I dangled it over the water. Our university ice cream truck came. The university creamery made a special ice cream flavor for Coast Day, so they brought it. So we have the Legos eating the under the sea ice cream. We had a photography contest. We also have our crab lab open, so we had the little Lego characters with the crab. And as we got closer, we talked about our seafood chowder challenge. The tents were going up, so I got out on the roof and put them up there with the tents going up in the background. And it was a lot of fun. It was another experiment that just happened to work. But I'm fortunate in that I have the flexibility with our management to try these different things and see what works. Unfortunately, most of it does. Not everything's a success, but with all the analytic tools and feedback and surveys, we can really see what works for us and then kind of keep pushing the envelope on the social side and on our communications. So basically what we've learned for engaging the public, that the imagery is the key. Our shareable social, kind of the did you know that usually starts out our 15-second science, tend to be really engaging. Giving folks a first person or hands-on perspective tends to do really well with our imagery and videos. Giving them the unique views, like the underwater view of the scallops. And doing things in real time, allowing folks follow along on social media, that tends to do really well too, especially with some of the research. What's next for us? We're working with CDEVI, which is the Center for Deep Biosphere Research, and NSF on a grant to kind of expand our 15-second science on some of the deep biosphere research, which we have on our site. And that has allowed us to also expand our 15-second science into some Spanish versions. So now we have many of the latest ones in both English and Spanish available. And then we're kind of going back in the other way with some dive deeper segments. So we have our 15-second science on the topic, And then we'll go, dive deeper into 1 to 2 minute videos on topics if teachers or the public are more interested in some of the more complex science behind things. And in YouTube, you can link the 2 videos together. So they can watch the 15-second science and then click onto the dive deeper to learn more. And we're also working with VR. This is an example of one of our VR experiences that you can go online. And you can actually embed things into these 360-degree views. So this is a view on the JOIDES Resolution drilling ship, where they can go underneath the derrick, experience what it's like being on the ship and underneath the derrick in a virtual way. And then there are information tabs within that view where we can link the 15-second science episodes on how they do the drilling, which is a lot of fun. And so we're kind of linking these into more complex stories. So you can have the virtual experience, you can learn a little more about the science in the 15-second science, and you can also explore throughout the ship. That's a portal. If you're in the VR, you just stare at the portal and it takes you in there if you stare at it for 3 seconds, or you can click through if you're online. And this takes you into the control room. So we can do virtual field trips to unusual places like these ships. And then link up some of our 15-second science videos with it. And one other thing we're doing is working with story maps. And this will just take us through one of our story maps. If anyone works in story maps, this is the new version they have called Cascade, which is very visually alluring. You can put in the maps like we're all used to. This was for a bay to bay workshop where we did a transect across a peninsula from bay to bay. And the map, people could explore our stops and see exactly where they were. And as we did the workshop, I updated the story map every day with some beautiful imagery, some examples of some of the work we did with links to find out more. And you can also embed the videos into the story maps as well. In this cascade, as you'll see coming up, I have linked in a YouTube video showing people using an augmented sandbox, which lets them change different geographical things to show how water flow and collection changes off the land. So this is all embedded into one story. So it's a great way to take all of the great images and videos and maps and data and put them all into one piece. We also did a water quality transect as part of this, and later down in the story map, I was able to put all that water quality data. So if people are interested in replicating that transect with the water quality, they could do that as well. So to wrap up, some quick lessons learned. Experiment. We experiment all the time to see what works. Post with purpose. For social media, we try to link absolutely everything we do with the work that we do. We don't just post a pretty picture because we're out on the bay and there's a beautiful sunset. Every single post actually links back to our purpose, our science serving the Delaware coast. We make sure that we are able to connect it with either the research or the outreach we're doing and provide those linkages. Again, experiment. Seize the moment. If there's something really cool going on, you've got your phone right here. You've got one of the best little video cameras you can use for social media. Share it right from that moment and kind of bring people along on the experience. Embrace your community partners. Work with everybody else in your community to share each other's content and support each other in that way. Experiment. I can't say that enough. That's why it's up here on every other one. And basically, use what you have and multitask with it. Almost everything we have, we use on all of our different social platforms. We might use it on one first, but then we'll share it to others in different ways and get as much mileage as we can out of what we have. And last of all, have fun. That's what social media is about. It's about connecting with others and connecting our science and getting other people as excited about it as you are. So finish up with a quote from Steve Jobs, just because I found, as I said, kind of in life as well as in work, you never quite know how the dots are going to connect until you're kind of past them, but using that experience to move forward is one of the best things that you can do. So Thank you so much.